Memento Mori. Remember you must die. Ooh, sounds a little ominous to some. I guess you could think of it that way. No, I like to think of it as an invitation to become aware, to bask in the wonder of being alive, to not take anything for granted, to be witness to the painful beauty of this life and all that was, is, and ever will be. I started to embrace the idea of death as I became a teenager. Could be all the death metal bands that were the rage in the 80s and 90s, but I went the classical route. I really got into requiems, musical compositions created to honor the dead. I loved the Verdi Requiem, the Fauré Requiem, and especially the Mozart Requiem. We've all seen it if we've watched the movie Amadeus. In high school and college, I even got to perform in these pieces, either as a violinist or a vocalist. It's these little invitations that we see around us, if we pay attention, inviting us to accept death, that allow each moment to be that much sweeter. My guest today is someone who is constantly inviting people to consider and even embrace their own mortality. She is a certified death doula, a shiatsu practitioner, an end-of-life navigator, and a mixed media artist who specializes in Memento Mori art, both as a philosophy and as a medium that she uses to express herself. She's also a great friend of mine, the ultimate cool girl, and I'm excited for you all to meet her. Welcome to Before You Go, the official podcast of Abode Contemplative Care for the Dying. At Abode, our mission is that we live in a world where death is not feared, and we live fully until we die. And we'd like to make that happen before we go. I'm Natalie Buster, yoga, volunteer, and doula director at Abode in San Antonio, Texas. Welcome to Before You Go. Welcome, Courtney.
Hi, Natalie.
You're rocking the red lips. I love it.
Thanks for that amazing introduction.
Well, you're an
I
amazing
appreciate
lady.
it. I'm so honored to be on this podcast and here with you today.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have just been enjoying a lot of your comments on our podcast. That's been so great. I love that you've been watching and listening to us as well. And I think we're going to have a really great conversation today, and our viewers are going to love you just as much as I do.
Well, I'm excited, and I've definitely been getting inspired by listening to the previous guests that you've had. Everyone always has something new to share, and it's always inspiring.
Oh, I agree. I agree. We know some cool people, don't we, Courtney?
We do, we do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Courtney, you and I met at Abode where we served as kind of a hybrid of volunteering, yoga-ing, doula-ing,
Deep listening.
deep listening. Yes, there's something really special that we offer at Abode called Deep Listening Circles, which was thought up by Linda O'Neill and Catherine Lillibridge. And Courtney and I were in the very first Deep Listening Circle. So I think we got to know a lot about each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Oh my
beautiful.
gosh. It is beautiful. And I
Mhm.
think as I got to know you, I discovered just how many things that you do and like how cool you are in the way that you look at life and the way that you use your art, but also your shiatsu experience, your understanding of philosophy and theology, and you being a death doula. So I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but what is the one thing or like the culmination? How would you describe yourself to people who may not know about these subjects and kind of what you do and how you help people?
Well, I feel like that definition is always changing and evolving, but it seems like each stage of my life has led me to the next, and they've all kind of built on top of each other. So it's been a very organic flow. I usually just summarize things. I just say I'm an artist and an end of life doula, but it's a lot more than that. And I think it's constantly evolving and shaping itself to show me what it is. I came to the death work organically, and but when I looked back, I saw that there were so many things in my life, like the shiatsu practice, the healing arts, the masters in women's spirituality and theology, and how those all kind of led me up to that point. And so I became interested in, I would say, Memento Mori, but I started volunteering at the Morbid Anatomy Museum, which is full of memento moris and death related subjects and art. And that was in 2014. So I was doing that, and I was practicing shiatsu at the time and working on art, but not having a lot of time to focus on my art. And then around 2020, I started thinking about wanting to assist people in the transition from life to death and what that meant. And that was also spurred by a lot of people around me dying and feeling like the conversation wasn't there to help people prepare and have the good death, necessarily the best possible death they could have. And so I didn't even know what a death doula was. I just started typing in words in the internet, and eventually death doula came up. So that was what led me.
So you mentioned the good death. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about what that might mean for you. I loved also how you said it, like the best death that people can have in the situations that they're in. But what does that kind of mean for you, and how can you help people get closer to that good death?
I feel like entering each situation with a beginner's mind and really listening to the person and picking up on cues in their environment and what they're saying to you and what their diagnosis is, and then just formulating a plan with them to create that environment. And it's different for each person. But for me, it would involve amazing ambiance and as little pain as possible. Those are two important things for me.
I think that's good for people to understand first that they will in fact die, like every being on this earth has died, will die, or is in the process of dying. And so I think once we get our heads wrapped around that concept, then we can embrace it and really start to design what that might look like for us through these end of life preparations. And one of the things I love about you, Courtney, is that you give a really beautiful presentation both to our doula students and our yoga doula students about just that, like how to navigate all of the end of life paperwork and advanced directives, but also how they might start, how your client might start to visualize that good death, that peaceful passing. And so I wonder if you can kind of just walk us through what types of things you provide in that way through the advanced directives and preparing for the inevitable, and then really stage managing the death in a way.
Yes, stage managing is a perfect description. I'm going to write that into my bio. I love that. Um, so basically, you can start advanced directives or end of life planning at any stage of life, even at 18 when you leave your parents' house. It just gives you a sense of power over who is going to speak for you if you can't speak for yourself, what your wishes are around your medical desires, and how you want to live. And like, if you want to live a full life up until the very end, or if you're okay with losing some of your functioning for a while. And just that transition is really important to get in writing and get notarized and witnesses signed for that. So that's the advanced directives for medical and your will for financial. And then you can get more deeply into the emotional, psychological, and spiritual aspects of if you have any death fears or blocks that you want to discuss, or maybe there's some book you can read that will help shape your feelings as you go along that path. And I also feel that that can start at any time. Like, it's not, basically what my whole point is with the end of life planning is, don't wait till you're sick or on your deathbed to start that process, because I feel like it interferes with the smooth flow of that transition. And there's enough factors that are going to could be very challenging. You don't need to add that in on top of it. So that's where I would start. And then you can get more into like a sacred vigil plan, which is really a more artful part of the process, and also legacy planning and memorial planning. Like what kind of disposition do you want? And I'm personally really drawn to green disposition methods. So that piques my interest in the beginning of my journey with death work as well.
Oh, how beautiful. And I love that you, Courtney, you bring your whole self and all of the things that interest you and you're curious about to allow you to better serve the clients that you work with. You mentioned the art of that sacred vigil planning. And if it's not prying too much, just between us gals, do you have a vision for your own sacred vigil?
Well, I have written it out, and like everything in my life, it's always changing. One of the key pieces is that I would love to pass while I'm in a bathtub with water. And I would like to be warm and comfortable and surrounded by people that I love, but I imagine it to be very peaceful, and I want the scene to be as beautiful as possible with flowers and music and aromatherapy and bird sounds. I don't know if I'll be outside or not, but that would be amazing if I could be outside.
Oh, yeah. I always picture Abode, and while Abode doesn't have a bathtub, we could probably bring a bathtub in there or something like a bathtub. But yeah, have those French doors open to the garden that's in our backyard and really listening to the wind chimes and the birds singing. Oh, you painted such a beautiful picture. You must be an artist or something.
I don't know.
No.
I sure like beauty. I know that.
Yeah. So, I'm curious about the concept of memento mori because what I know about it is very little. I know that it comes from Stoicism, which is a way, a specific philosophy. And I wonder if you can educate us a little bit more about what it is, what you wish more people knew about it.
Well, I have to say I loved your introduction about it
Phew, got
and
that
how
right.
you already yes, you're already expanding people's um thoughts on it, I think, by talking about music, because that's so true. It can be music, it could be poetry. I have some Memento Mori jewelry on that I bought for my birthday this year, and it's got a skull inside a mirror. You can't really see it. But then on the back, it says, "Look within." So really, it is about looking within, and it's about facing our mortality, and of course, we all know it translates to remember you will die, because as humans, we tend to be very vain and we like to avoid the subject. I was a major death avoider for many years. So I think it encompasses that, but it also focuses on aging and disease. It's not just death, but every day there's little deaths that we experience as humans, and we're basically dying from the time we're born. So there's that, and also as we age we can lose certain functions or abilities. So I think it can encompass a broad range of subjects, not just more of the gory ones that you sometimes see. And the skull is the ultimate memento mori for a lot of different cultures, but there can be so much more than that.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it because I think that's why there's this fear of death, right? That's permeating in the human existence. And so people then, when they think of memento mori or remember you will die, it does sound ominous. And it brings to mind or conjures up gory images or horror images, but it could also just be witnessing nature in a lot of ways. I have a friend in Madison, Wisconsin. Her name is Anne, and she is a flower arranger. She's a florist, and she puts together these beautiful bouquets with the cycles of life in mind. So she'll put buds in, things that haven't yet bloomed, something that is in full bloom, and then something that is dying, just to have that full experience using nature as her memento mori.
I really love
Isn't
that.
that beautiful?
Mhm.
Yeah, it can be all sorts of different disciplines. It could be music, art, flower arranging.
Flowers are a perfect example
Yeah, tell me more.
because you, well, just they're already dying, when you get them, right? When they're right when they bloom, they're already on their way out. So, and you have to accept that they're going to shrivel. You're not going to be able to keep that perfect flower arrangement as it is. It's going to last for about a week, so it helps you on a micro level experience something in nature dying, like you said. Observing nature is a perfect nature is a memento mori in itself if you look closely enough.
Yeah, and it's allows us to really appreciate the beauty because it is fleeting. Like it's not something that's tangible that we can hold and own and grasp and clasp, but it's ephemeral. And so there's a preciousness in that.
Right. And I think in medieval times when memento mori was born during the plague, they would see maybe flowers as human vanity or beauty and how that's going to die.
So they would
You're
use
not going to
that.
always be. They actually I think that was part of the symbology in one of the memento mori traditions was the flower represented that human vanity and beauty and how it eventually dies.
And I think it's so healthy. We think of things like you mentioned illness or injury too, that could disrupt our idea of beauty or eternal youth. And it just reminds us that we are human and that by being human, we will die. Yeah. Oh my gosh. You and I were both in a book club recently, and this book, it's called How We Live is How We Die by Pema Chodron. You and I both led a session on it, and I loved your session. And we were, one of the things that I really took away from that book was the ability to practice death in these little micro moments. You kind of mentioned that earlier, where even this conversation or even this day, this moment, this sentence has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it will also be done. It'll die in a way. And we can study that.
I loved that phrase that she used between, different parts of your day. Be aware of, okay, like right now we're having this podcast and this conversation. And, I might be sad when it ends because I'll be like, that was so much fun. What am I going to do now? But then there'll be a beginning of something else. Well, maybe now I'll go for a walk or cook dinner or work on something. And then that'll be the start of the next activity in my day. And at night, you go to sleep. And then that's the end of the day, the ultimate end of the day. And you are going into an altered state of consciousness when you sleep, too, like death. So it's just kind of like we're doing this on a micro level every day, multiple times a day.
Yeah, lots of opportunities to practice that or confront or befriend that fear of mortality, which I think is, to me, it means that we can live a beautiful and fulfilling life because then every moment is precious.
Right. And that's one of the other things I guess I would want people to know about Memento Mori is the point of it is to help people embrace the preciousness of our life and our mortality as it is now. In doing so, we may face dark thoughts or feelings around death, but the ultimate goal is to be like, what do you want to do while you're still here? And how do you want to feel? What kind of person do you want to be?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. Um, so you've worked with people as a death doula and at Abode as a navigator. And with this beautiful philosophy that you carry, can you share with us an example of maybe how your work or how your being, your presence has helped others?
I try to go into every situation with an open mind and beginner's mind, like I said earlier. I feel like I can be present to darker feelings or conversations people may want to have. And I feel like I'm cultivating an ability to go to those places with others, whether they're a stranger or someone I just met or someone I've known for years. So I feel like that really informs my approach as an end of life doula. And we do talk about that in doula training, but I feel like the Memento Mori just adds another angle to it where I can bring art in if they want to work on art, or if the family would like a portrait, or maybe it just makes them feel more comfortable sharing about feelings they have around art or their creativity. So I feel like that's something unique I bring. And also, the shiatsu practice is coming very handy with clients so far because I feel very comfortable with touch and helping them move energy or helping them calm their system, because that's something I did for about 20 years on and off. So that's very natural for me, that part of it.
I can imagine that is so wonderful because I think that, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I feel like a lot of people are afraid to touch people who are dying for whatever reason. It could be this deep seated, you mentioned medieval times before, like this feeling that we're going to catch mortality from people.
Yeah,
So being able to offer that gift of touch, I think is so beautiful that you do.
I think it's important. I'm sure you've heard it a lot, and you're a yoga therapist too. But so you are probably comfortable touching people. But sometimes people ask, "Is it okay if I touch them?" I don't know if you've heard that
Yeah.
before, but I've heard that a lot. Like people aren't sure whether they should. Like maybe they are afraid they'll hurt them or that they'll make them uncomfortable. But that's also something you can put in your end of life planning, whether you want to be touched or whether you don't.
It's so interesting. I like to share the story of my mom because my mom was not a hugger. Like I'm a hugger, and I'd greet her, and it'd be like, "Mwah, mwah, okay, that's enough." But as she was dying, that changed, and I was able to give her foot massages where she would never let me touch her feet before. But as she was coming towards the end of life, I was able to give her that gift of touch. And I saw firsthand just how important that was and what a connection I was able to have with her.
That's lovely. And I do feel like people's defenses tend to soften at the end. So I think more likely than not they're going to want to be touched. I can't say 100%, I don't know those facts, but I think leaning that direction's everything I've read from hospice workers to other doulas experience to my own is that they do like being touched.
I love that. What has this done for your own life? Like as you study Memento Mori, as you work with people at the end of life, have you seen a shift in how you view your life?
I definitely don't take things for granted as much. And I try to do one thing every day that scares me.
Ooh, isn't that an Eleanor Roosevelt thing?
I think it
It
might
sounds like
be.
it.
But I keep that one in my head. And also trying to put myself in other people's shoes. So some people might say I have lived a charmed life or whatever, but I've never had a major disease or cancer or anything like that. I'm fully, functioning. I don't have a disability, but I think working with people who have had illnesses for a long time, it's made me more grateful for what I do have and the family and friends that I have, the love I have in my life, because you see so many people dying alone. So it really brings home that how important relationships are, how important empathy is, and how important it is not to put off those things that you really want to do with your life, and look at your fears and look at your denial that you might have in any area. But death seems to be like one of the major ones.
I love that you said, like, do it now. Do it now. Don't wait.
Right. That's why I went to Italy. That's why I went there.
Yes. So you just went on a beautiful art trip to Italy, artist in residence. That's so cool. Did you encounter any Memento Mori art when you were in Europe?
Oh, yes. Well, I chose Naples specifically because it's an epicenter for Memento Mori
Well,
enthusiasts.
there you go.
And yes, and there's, the catacombs. And it's kind of a cute story about my friend Hyde that I was traveling with. he was very excited to go to the catacombs. And the one that we planned on going to a few different places, and we saw all these like churches that literally had catacombs and skull memorials and like full skeletons in their basements. And they were embracing, these Catholic churches were just like embrace that element right out there for everyone. And but one of the ones we went to, we got to the into it and there were no bones anywhere. And he was so disappointed. He's like, I wanted to see the skulls.
I came for the bones. Where are the bones?
We had to move them to another property. And that was one of the places that I was really looking forward to going to, but they were renovating it while we were there. It's the Fontenelle Cemetery. And there's like 20,000 skulls, and that's where all the women go and nuns go and they pray. They choose a skull to pray with. They're praying for their soul, the passage of their soul to the next realm or to heaven, for their safe passageway. But that was closed while we were
Oh,
there.
you'll just have to go back.
Yeah, I think I made note of when that was going to be, but
I can imagine that this subject doesn't resonate with everybody that you meet. And I'm curious how you get past some of the people who really don't want to talk about death. Or do you just, or do you? Do you let them lead? You had mentioned that beginner's mind.
some of the challenges that I've come across, people don't want to look at the art. They're just like, oh, scary. Um, that's not a big deal to me because that's normal in the art world, anyways. But with the end of life planning, it's like crickets sometimes. I put it out there and I'll say, so and so will be like, I recommended this person to you to do their end of life planning. And then I'll keep checking in with them and they just put it off until like I just stop texting with them or calling. And it's pretty hard to get people to look at it until I think they're at the very end. And that's something that I felt very passionate about when I first started. And now I've just kind of mellowed out on it. Like, you can't make people want to do this. They will do it in their own time. And all you can do is offer it. And when they're ready, they're ready.
That's such great advice because we see that a lot in our doula dispatch service too, is we have these eager doula graduates who are ready to serve and ready to help people. And what I feel like I'm constantly telling them is like, yeah, we can't push anything on them. They will come to it or not, but it has nothing to do with the doulas as teachers or as guides. It's really about the people that we're serving, and we want to let them lead the way. We can show them the tools that we have and the ways that we can help, but at the end, it's their decision.
Right. I've even had people approach me about wanting to have a doula or do end of life planning. Like, I didn't approach them and they seemed really into it. And they even came back a couple times and then it just doesn't happen. So it's so true. But I think I remember I didn't really understand hospice when my first experience with it. It's taken a lot of education for me to really get the full scope of it. And I feel like doulas are included within that world and we can be utilized even way before people are in hospice. But I just think I was very death avoidant. My mom passed away about 10 years ago exactly. And that was the first huge death in my life that wasn't a grandparent.
I think until it becomes personal, it's something that people don't necessarily feel that they need to think about. But what I love about you is that you also do the art. So it's like these other channels, these other ways that people can enter into these conversations, which is good. It starts to normalize the idea.
Yeah, that's the perfect word. I think that's part of my purpose is and what led me here was to help normalize the death conversation. And if whether that's through art or philosophy or end of life planning or I mean after death, I like to work in that realm too. But art is a big one and philosophy. If you can make it a little bit more fun for people or one thing about Memento Mori too is they can be very humorous and I like that.
Oh my gosh. Courtney, I am enjoying this conversation so much. I could talk to you all day. And in fact, let's make a date soon so we can talk more about this.
I think we do have a date soon
Yeah,
on
we do. I'm so
Saturday.
excited. We're
Yeah.
going to tour Countryside Memorial Park, which was featured last week on last week's podcast. So we're going to go and visit that. How are you filling your cup? You have all of these things going on. You work with people at the end of life. How do you keep yourself healthy?
I do a lot of meditating, so I try to meditate twice a day, transcendental meditation, and yoga is one of the things. And I also love to
Oh my gosh, I'm coming over for dinner. Let's do this. Well, how can people find you online and read more about all of the fabulous things you offer?
cook. Okay, well, if you want to find my end of life work, you can go to endoflifearts.com. And to see any of my art, you can go to courtneywynsheets.com.
Great. We'll put those in the show notes as well. We ask this question of all of our guests, Courtney, what do you want to do before you go?
Before I go, I would like to have more time on the sea. I would like to go sailing or learn how to sail.
Oh, I love that. Any particular reason why?
I just always been drawn to the coastline, the beach, and being on the water. And I like the idea of just being out in the middle of the ocean. Like, I feel like it's otherworldly in a way.
Oh my gosh, Courtney, you are the best. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. This was such a great conversation.
Yes, I loved it. Thank you so much.
This episode is brought to you by Abode's Death Cafe. Our objective is to increase awareness of death with a view to helping people make the most of their finite lives. To learn more about Death Cafe, go to abodehome.org. Oh, I love me some Courtney Sheets. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine? Like, we have conversations like that every time we're together. She is just the coolest. We're the same age. We're both from the year of the tiger. Like, it's great. She's like the friend that reminds me of my high school friends. Like, I had those kinds of deep conversations and expressions of creativity and cool stuff. And I'm just so happy to have her in my life. Memento Mori is pretty cool. And I think before I go, I need to go to Naples and check out all those amazing cemeteries that Courtney was talking about. I've been to Naples before, but I didn't go to any of those things. This was before I was really introduced and influenced by death positivity. So I need to go back. Who doesn't need an opportunity or an excuse to go to Italy? Am I right? But yeah, that's what I want to do before I go. Go see those catacombs and cemeteries and churches in Naples. Oh, gosh. Next week is our very last episode of season 2. So hope you all can join us. Thank you so much for being great listeners and viewers. And if you get a chance, drop a little note or a comment in the comment section and let us know what you'd like to do before you go. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Before You Go, the official podcast of Abode Contemplative Care for the Dying. At Abode, we believe death is not a medical event, and we are not medical professionals. We're just sharing our opinions, and these opinions shouldn't be taken as medical advice. You can find us online on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. This episode was edited by Make Your Day Richer.